Hi guys, Kim here in my kitchen, and it's about to be dinner time, and so I thought, let's film me cooking dinner. Why not? What else do we have to do these days, right? So I thought this might be helpful. I thought earlier today about what did I have in my house that people might be interested in seeing me cook, and I came up with eggplant parmesan. 2 eggplants. I have some fresh basil that I got kind of on a whim. I have 2/3 of a jar of Rayo's tomato sauce, the Marinara, that I used for something else a while ago. But, you know, tomatoes are acidic. They seem to last a while in the fridge. I have some cheese. I don't have a ton of cheese, but I have some mozzarella. I got a little bit of Romano, where I would usually use a different blend, but it'll work just fine. And I have some pork panko, the ground pork rinds. So I was like, well, I can make a keto version of eggplant parm. So the reality is that eggplant a little carbier than your average keto veg, but it can totally work. I come in around 10 grams of total carbs a serving on this, so I tend to have this on a day when maybe my other meal wasn't super carby, and it's totally fine. So I've done a few variations. Like I don't have as much cheese as I'd want, so you can adjust, and I'll be giving narration as I go through all the steps, but I just want you to see that, like, unlike baking, where if you don't have exactly the right amount of things it can be a problem, this is a little more flexible. And so I'm working with what I have, and I can give you some substitutions as we go. Obviously, some cheeses can be changed out. It'll change the flavor, but that might be a good thing. So you'll get step-by-step how-to as we go, but I just wanted to welcome you to the video, to my shelter-in-place quarantine kitchen, and making do with what's in the fridge. So let's get to it.
Using 2 medium or large eggplant, you're gonna slice them into thin rounds. Not too thin, you don't want them floopy, but fairly thin because we're gonna be stacking these. Once they're all sliced, you're gonna discard the ends, and you're going to get out a baking tray, preferably with a rack in it, because it makes this whole thing a lot easier. If you don't have one though, you can sub some parchment. So you're going to lay out all of those rounds and salt them well with a coarse salt, not a fine salt, or else they'll get too salty. And you're going to sprinkle that salt all over one side, flip them over, and salt the other side. You're then going to just leave that sitting for about 15 minutes. It'll pull out some of the water and also some of the bitterness and make the whole thing taste better. While that's sitting, you can prep your egg wash and your breading. So the egg wash is literally just 2 beaten eggs, and the breading is 3 ounces of ground pork rinds. I use pork panko by Bacon's Air. I think it's probably the easiest and best quality thing to use, but if you have a fruit processor at the handy, you can always make your own. And then I mix that with 3 ounces of Parmesan, or you can also use Romano, whatever you've got on hand. And you're going to, I like to make it in a bigger bowl and then portion out small amounts at a time of that batter, or rather the breading, because it can get a little gloopy from the egg. And so then you can just replenish with fresh, because sticky is not good here. You need it to stick to the eggplant, not to your hands or the bowl or itself. So once that 15 minutes is up, you're going to take some paper towels and dry and brush off your eggplant. So brush off the excess salt and dry the eggplant from the surface wetness that it's got. You'll go through a couple paper towels. I'm a little rough on my eggplant, so kind of a little manhandled. You can be a little gentler. You want to make sure that you're not shaking the salt back onto the already clean eggplant as you go. And if you use a rack, the extra salt's just fallen through, but if you use the parchment, you do also need to shake out that parchment. So once your eggplant is dried, you're going to start to dip it. You're going to first dip it in the egg wash and then drip it, let all the drips come off. So shake it off a little bit and then plop it into the breading mix. Tap it around, get the breading to stick. If you notice the breading isn't sticking real well, sprinkle some over the top again and lightly pat it to stick. And you should get a nicely breaded piece of eggplant. Now put it back on your tray and continue this process, replenishing the breading as you need until you have a full tray of very nicely breaded pieces of eggplant. So once that's done, you're going to put them into the oven. You'll want to have preheated the oven. I should have told you that before, to 400 degrees, and you're going to cook them for 40 minutes. Now, if you use parchment because you didn't have a rack, you're actually going to need to flip them midway. Do that carefully. You don't want the breading to fall off, but that should work out just fine. So 40 minutes total in a 400 degree oven. While that's cooking, you can prep your basil. So I take about a half ounce or so of basil and pick it off its stems and roll it up, and then I slice it. So I layer the leaves on top of each other, make a little roll out of them, and then slice it, and then you are ending up slicing multiple leaves at a time, or else you'll be there forever. But if you don't have anything else to do, you can always slice them one at a time. It's not quite as easy. So do that until you've got a nice little bowl full of basil. Set that aside. Go do your nails or something. In about 40 minutes, your eggplant will be done with its first step of cooking. Let that cool a bit, and then carefully make sure it's not sticking to the parchment or the rack. You don't want the the breading to stick to that. You want it to come off with the eggplant. Let it cool a bit and add some sauce to a casserole dish. You're using about a cup and a half of sauce altogether. This is just some marinara from Rao's, which is a low sugar that is delicious. And put in about, to that first layer, about 2/3 of a cup of the sauce, approximately, and then layer the eggplant on top of that. Then once you've got and it's fine, if it overlaps a little bit, it's totally fine. Once you've got the eggplant down, I would sprinkle it with a good pinch of the basil. And then on top of the basil, you're going to sprinkle some more of the Parm or Romano, whatever you've got on hand. Now, I'm going a little light-handed in the cheese department here just because I didn't have very much. I would suggest you use more. A total, in terms of the Romano, probably around 2 more ounces beyond what we put in the breading. And then here is the mozzarella. I had sliced mozzarella, which it makes life a little easier. And I would say a total of about 8 ounces of mozzarella. Again, I used less because that's what I had. Then you're going to splat some of the sauce on top of that, just kind of center it on each piece of eggplant, and then top that with the rest of the eggplant. And then again, some of the basil, some of the cheeses, and just do that, centering the pieces basically on the eggplant. You're going to be melting it, so it's going to melt. And then you're topping it off with just a little bit of sauce at the end. So this last layer of sauce is the declining. So the first layer was a fair amount of sauce. The second layer was a medium amount of sauce. This is a very light amount of sauce. You want to be able to see some of the eggplant at the end. And so we're finishing up with the mozzarella and then some splats of sauce. And then we're going to pop that back in the oven, which we've left on from before. Notice we're reserving some basil for later. And cook that for about 20 minutes. We're just finishing out the eggplant and melting the cheeses and warming the sauce. And then now that's done, we're going to top that with the remaining basil. And then we're ready to serve. So take a little bit, put it on a plate. I usually say this amount that I've done in this recipe is about 8 servings, and this is a side dish. It's a little bit light in terms of fat and protein to really be a full meal, but if you want to turn it into a full meal, it's super easy. All you've got to do is brown some ground beef or pork or chicken or turkey, whatever, while those eggplants are cooking, just in a skillet, about a pound of meat, and put that in the bottom of the casserole dish before you start with the sauce and the layers of eggplant and cheese. And then now you've got a full meal, and it is truly delicious. And enjoy. And the leftovers will be great, and you can eat it for a few days. And if you don't like eggplant, I'd probably skip this one, but I love eggplant, so it's good by me. I find when I put this in my tracker for the amount of eggplant I used, now if you want to be accurate in your carb count, you want to weigh the eggplant because medium is not very specific. But I find from what I did here in this, it is about a 10 carb portion. So enjoy, and thank you for joining me on this Quarantine Kitchen eggplant parm.